John, I think we're going to two guests at once for the first time on the podcast, and it's a good two guests. It's our friends and colleagues, Mike Puma and Mike Vaccaro.
Yeah, before we get to all the positivity with the Yankees, time to, I don't know, we're going to say finish up with the Mets. I don't think so. We'll probably be talking about this memorable meltdown for a long time, but no better a guest to have at this point than Mike Puma and Mike Vaccaro. Vaccaro, a historic expert on the Mets history, incredible. And Puma is there every day. He saw it firsthand. So looking forward to a four-way screen. It should be outstanding.
Yeah, we have lots to talk about. Futures for Alonso and Diaz, the present failures. Should we trust David Stearns? You and I will talk some Yankees and the beginning of the playoffs. The pressure on Aaron Judge and Aaron Boone. We'll play hit and error at the end. If you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, if there's an opening for seer or oracle or Nostradamus, you're my man. You really saw this. I think it was that Philly series in particular where you just kept saying to me, Joel, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. The Mets are in big trouble. And I kept saying, come on, they're going to be better than the Diamondbacks, Giants, and Reds. Like they might not survive a first round against the Dodgers, but they're going to get in. And John, mea culpa here. You were right, and I was wrong right to the end. When Ronnie Mauricio, who never walks, drew a walk in the ninth inning when they were down 3-0 in Miami, and they were dead. I was like, well, this is going to be the first time all year they win a game they trail in the ninth inning. I just sitting here on Tuesday morning, I still don't believe they're not playing the Dodgers tonight.
Well, that's nice of you, but I'm no Nostradamus. I actually thought they were going to win the division. I hemmed and hawed over that at the beginning of the year
Yeah.
and ended up with them over Philly. I did have Atlanta in third, and they weren't very good. Miami ended up in third. So I'm not Nostradamus. But we didn't do it on purpose, but I did see more Mets than you saw more Yankees for whatever reason. The way the schedule broke, I was with the team. I also figured, if you played 70 or 80 games and you haven't been very good, why assume that you're going to snap out of it? And you certainly weren't alone in it. I mean, basically everybody thought that they would beat out the
It
Reds.
only took 84 wins to beat them out. How did they not get to 84?
It's shocking. I mean, all they had to do was go 39-54 or 8-13 over the last 21, and they didn't do it. They were too passive in the offseason. I thought they were too passive in the season, but they just were not a great team. We got to be honest about it. At this point. They're not that good a team. That's it.
Yeah, John, I think you're right. And look, we're going to do a big dive into what we think about all this. Our two guests coming up are Mike Puma, the Post Met beat writer, and Mike Vaccaro, who, besides being the general columnist, sports section general columnist, knows more Mets history, cares about the team. We will go into it all: Stearns, Mendoza, the fall apart cone, etc. But the Yankees, as we speak, are playing a playoff game, begin a playoff series tonight against the Red Sox. John, there's a lot of ways to boil down this series. For me, at some point, Aaron Judge has to cash in a regular season in the postseason. I think there's a pretty good chance he's going to win a third AL MVP. If it needed to be galvanized, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest impact regular season hitters ever. The numbers are just bad in the postseason overall. They're terrible with runners in scoring position. They're helpless with two strikes. The Yankees do not beat good teams in the playoffs outside of the AL Central. And because they don't get enough from Judge in general, to me, this is a mandate on the Aarons. Does Boone manage a team tough enough to do this? And does Judge carry them across a finish line?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, I think this is their time, and we've been back and forth on the Yankees, and that's reasonable considering they had that usual slump in the summer. But they have been outstanding lately. I feel like they're in great position. They've won their last 8 games. Boston's got more injuries or newer injuries. Certainly Roman Anthony being out. Now they've lost Giolito. So what are they going to do for game 3? So it feels like the Yankees should win this series. Being at home, a little bit of a plus as well. I do have faith in Judge. I don't want to say it's a small sample size. They're in the playoffs basically every year. It is stunning. I do think the other teams do prepare, do try to avoid, do a better job of that in the postseason. We've seen this before with other stars. Obviously, Ted Williams, not as many games, very few games actually in the postseason. Didn't have great stats for the one postseason he was in. We saw it with Barry Bonds. We saw it with A-Rod for a long time up until the end in 2009 when he was fantastic. I do think Judge will have a big postseason. Eventually, this might be it, but they have a great cast around him at this point in terms of the home runs. They hit 30 plus more home runs than anybody else. Rice is now a star. Grisham a throw-in the Soto deal. Was a star this year. Bellinger was an outstanding signing, not just for the defense and the versatility. He also hit home runs. Basically, everybody can hit home runs. I mean, and they don't have big issues at this moment. We've stopped talking about their fundamentals and their defense and Anthony Volpe for a few weeks now. Everything feels like it's falling right for the Yankees. After it started off bad with Cole and then Schmidt being out and the slumps. Right now, they're on a high, and to me, they're the American League favorite. And I'm not going to be surprised if Seattle or somebody else wins it, but we got to feel good about the Yankees right now.
Yeah, I think the Yankees did a Yankee thing, which is they know, as opposed to the Mets, they kind of know how to get in, right? They know how to get to. They won as many games this year as they won last year, as opposed to losing series to the Marlins and Nationals when bad teams were put in front of them at the end. The Yankees won them all. They go into the postseason with an 8-game winning streak, which gives them home field in this series against the Red Sox. I think they're still a little loose on the bases. They could get a little over adventurous, and against Alex Cora and Carlos Narvaez, I think that could be dangerous. And I think Garrett Crochet is the counterpunch here. They've faced Crochet 4 times this year. The Red Sox are 4-0 in those games, and Crochet has generally pitched well. Yankees are going to be able, like, there's got to be an exchange of strikeouts for homers, probably tonight for it. John, it just slipped my mind. And I'm not sure that I actually asked you a final question on it, where you ended up on Raleigh versus Judge for AL MVP.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading the room, and I think Judge is going to win the MVP. I don't know that. It could go to Raleigh. To me, I have so much sympathy for these catchers who are squatting for the entire year. And look at the historic record of catchers, and it shouldn't take the same stats. And I get it. Aaron Judge is the best hitter in baseball, and it's not even close. He was the best for batting average, for slugging, for OPS plus, for on base, even better than Soto and on base. He is the best hitter in the game. He's a very good right fielder. I get it if you vote for Judge. I just have a little sympathy for the catchers and also for doing something historic. And I get that Judge hit 50 home runs and won the batting title, and that's not done very often. But 60 home runs, the record had been 48, which was Sal Perez. 60 home runs for a guy who is a good defensive catcher. I don't care about the metrics of catching.
He's a good defensive catcher.
They have no idea. They cannot judge it. Look, Yogi Berra won 3 MVPs. His rate stats weren't spectacular. His WAR is not spectacular. Same with Roy Campanella. So in my mind, I kind of get the Raleigh vote. I kind of would lean that way. I don't have that vote. Don't worry, Yankee fans. Don't say anything to me about it. But I could see it either way. But I kind of lean Raleigh. I think Judge is going to win, though.
So just like John, I do not have a vote on this, so don't worry. But in pretend land, I guess I would like me and you would negate each other. I can't believe I wouldn't vote for a good catcher who hit 60 homers, who destroyed Mickey Mantle's switch hitting record, who destroyed Ken Griffey's Seattle Mariner record, 2 Hall of Famers. And yet, like, I just think the comparison I made writing, John, is there were I know you love when I go NBA. There were 2 years where I think voters kind of got a little bored, and Michael Jordan just kept putting up 30 points a night and being the most dynamic player on both sides of the court in the league. And they're like, we've done this. And they went with Charles Barkley one year and Karl Malone one year, where it really probably should have been Jordan. And I'm just watching a year in which Judge is up at 215 with a 215 OPS plus again, which is like regions of baseball hitting gods. In an age where nobody intentionally walks anyone, he was intentionally walked more than every other team Like no team had as many intentional walks as him. He drew one out of every 15 intentional walks this year. So the league was screaming about what kind of hitting plutonium he was. And the only way I could get beyond the 60 homers, John, to some degree was if Judge, say, wins the MVP this year, he'd have three MVP seasons. The MVP season in which he had 62 homers, I think would finish third in an MVP vote against last year and this year with Judge. I thought these were better years for Judge than even the years where he had 62. And yet, John, I'm with you. I don't know how you vote against a catcher who's a good catcher, whose team hadn't made the playoffs, what made it once since 2001, hadn't won a division, and he's the key guy. It would be, in some ways, I'm glad I don't have the vote this year. I don't usually mind controversy. I'll deal with whatever comes with it. But I think I know there's people who say it's not razor thin on one side or the other. I think it's razor thin. I think it's Judge, but I see the Raleigh argument
Right.
really.
I wouldn't argue. I mean, certainly, like I said, I could see either vote. I don't think people vote against somebody due to voting exhaustion. They vote for whoever they think is the MVP that year. I mean, last year, Bobby Witt Jr. had an amazing season. If there was any exhaustion, somebody could have easily voted for him. Judge won unanimously, as he deserved to and should have. I don't think that's it. It's like I don't think having two guys on one team that they split the vote. I don't believe in that. I don't think that's ever proven out to be anything. People vote for who they think is the MVP, and that's the way it should be. And I do think the majority of people are going to vote for Judge. I hope it's not because of the Twitter outcry of Yankee fans. It is quite something how excited and positive they are about Judge should be the MVP, and yet if he strikes out tonight as we do this,
I'll get booed.
he might get booed. So it's a little crazy, but that's why they're fans. And we love them because without them, we don't have jobs.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing this. And also, if Raleigh were a Yankee and Judge was a Mariner, they'd all be saying, "How do you not vote for a catcher with 60 homers?"
Right.
Right? Like, so there's that.
Of
Look,
course.
we're going to do lots of Yankees over the coming weeks. They're in the playoffs, and if suddenly they're not in the playoffs, I'm sure we'll be doing post-mortems on them. But the big story in town right now is the collapse of the Mets, and we felt that it was the right time to get two experts on the team and their history and guys who could look forward. And that's our colleagues, Mike Puma and Mike Vaccaro, and they join us next on the show. Well, John and I think we have special guests this week. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's Cindy Brady and Bobby Brady. No, that's an old Brady Bunch thing. If you're watching and seeing all the squares, I don't know, John. I'm not sure if we've ever done multiple guests before, but I'm glad if we're doing it for the first time. It's our colleagues and our friends, the Mikes. Mike Vaccaro, our great general columnist at the New York Post, and Mike Puma, our longtime Mets beat writer, both terrific at their jobs. And guys, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Good to be here, guys.
Yeah, all right. That's great, Joel. Yeah.
So look, it's obvious why we're gathered here today to do this, where we need to eulogize, or worse, the 2025 Mets and what happened. You're a great guest for this. A lot of history, a lot of perspective. So Mike Puma, why don't I start with you and just 2025 Mets? Start us out.
Well, I mean, you look at it, and they got Juan Soto over the winter. They brought Pete Alonso back. They made some pitching upgrades. I thought this was a 90-win team. I thought this was a team built to go deep into the postseason. And even as they were sputtering here throughout the summer, Joel, I kept thinking they're going to get this back on track. This is too good a team not to figure this out. And September came along and they nosedive again. And yet, as I'm packing, leaving for that final trip, going, it's Chicago, Miami, they're going to get enough wins. They'll get one more win and they'll get in, and, then we'll see what happens in the postseason. I just did not see them missing the postseason, and I'm still kind of in a little bit of shock here.
Back?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think I was a little less bully on the Mets at the beginning of the year than Mike was. I think I picked them for 85 wins. I thought they'd finish third in the East because obviously the Braves surprised everybody. I just thought they were a little thin where they turned out being thin and with the arms. I just didn't trust I wasn't as big an advocate of the pitching lab and fixing everything as a lot of people were. Look, I mean, as it turns out, 85 wins would have gotten them in. So, look, I mean, I think what you saw in real time was a team that just lost every aspect of itself. I mean, when it was the quintessential, Joe, you and I talked about this often, it was the quintessential bad team. When you scored enough runs, the pitching, the starters blew up. When the starters gave you a good effort, the bullpen blew the game. They were 0-70 in games where they trailed after 8 innings, which is hard to fathom. I mean, during the course of the year, I guarantee if we go back and look at it, the 62 Mets probably won 3 games they were trailing in the bottom of the ninth or the top of the ninth. So to me, I mean, that is kind of a red flag right there, but it kind of talks to you about what the Mets were. They just didn't seem to have that it thing. And look, they had it for the first 60, 70 games of the year. I thought they wildly overachieved during that time, and what you got was the complete opposite over the rest of the season. Really, what we're trying to be weird is that this year was the absolute mirror image of last year when they couldn't get out of their own way until June, then they couldn't lose until the end of the year, and it was the exact flip script this year. It was very strange to watch. Very top heavy lineup, and look, I mean, at the end of the day, when you're literally relying on 3 rookies who weren't on the roster by August 1st to carry you to the end, that's a problem, and that's ultimately where the Mets were.
Back, you're a genius to think they were going to win 85 games. I think the rest of us, I'm not speaking for Joel here, figured they were easily a playoff team. I don't know if they were a world beater, but adding Soto and bringing Alonso back, they look pretty darn good. Mike, I mean, Vac brought up a million things, and there were a lot of things beyond the pitching, but what the hell happened to that pitching? We heard so many great things about the vaunted pitching lab, and their pitching was the best in baseball when they were 45-24. How did this happen?
Yeah, and it's really. I mean, I really put it on 3 guys here. It's Kodai Senga, it's David Peterson, and it's who's the third guy?
Right.
And Sean
Right.
Manaea. And really, the kind of inexplicable one to me is David Peterson, who had an all-star first half here, and he just fell off a cliff beginning in August. And you get 1 or 2 more good starts out of him. Now Senga, listen, Senga came out and he had what, a 1.27 ERA, strained his hamstring covering first base. He's not the same guy when he comes back, and he kind of alluded to that Sunday in Miami, that he never felt quite right physically after he came back from that hamstring injury. So there's something to be said there for the physical. There's something to be said for the physical aspect with Manaea, who had the oblique. I mean, who had him missing half the season with an oblique injury, and then coming back and not being even a shell of what he was last year. So I mean, I put it on those 3 guys: Manaea, Peterson, and Senga. You get a couple of more quality starts each from them, and this is a different story right now.
I think we can be specific to Manaea too, because this was the guy who was their ace last year when they made their last push. He was terrific for the most part in the postseason, and you expected him to be their bell cow this year. And it's again, he got hurt, but the thing is, when he came back in that game against Kansas City right before the All-Star game, he looked terrific. He looked like himself. So you would expect then that you would get from him what you got from him last year, and it couldn't have been more opposite. And when a guy like that winds up getting shelled in the first inning like he did against Philly a couple of weeks ago, and always seemed to have a problem in the 4th or the 5th inning, you couldn't get past that. I think that bleeds down to the rest of the staff. And I really think that if you want to look for one element that really hurt the Mets, that's it. I mean, he didn't even necessarily have to be an ace this year. If he had just been an above average pitcher, they would have gotten 1 or 2 more wins, and that's all they really needed.
I'm going to use one of my 3 timeouts here to point out 2 things. Jon Heyman was ahead of this on me by so much, which he usually is. He kept telling me the Mets weren't good weeks ago, and I was doing the opposite. I was telling Vac on text messages, oh, come on, they're just going to get in the playoffs. We all know this. This is ridiculous. And John kept telling me, like, he was always saying, these Fangraph odds are ridiculous. Like, the Mets are in real trouble here. But the reason I'm using the timeout is we got 4 posties here, and we're being way too nice. we this is David Stearns's mess, right? This is David Stearns's mess. There was a philosophy here, and I think David is superb at what he does, and given time, will probably get this very right and get the Mets on the roll. But the Mets did two things because they have Steve Cohen's money, Juan Soto and Pete Alonso, and that worked out okay. And all the craft stuff that is supposed to be Stearns went terribly. They rotated third baseman. They never found one really. Maybe Brett Beatty, but then he got hurt. They went to Mania. They went to Montas. They went to Griffin Gaining. They thought they were going to have pitching depth. They didn't. They thought they were going to have defense. They didn't. Isn't this just about David Stearns having a terrible season and Met fans hoping that I'm right, that he's a really good at this and he's having the bad season in a baseball career, but will return to being a 320 hitter next year?
And here's what I find interesting, Joel. I mean, I talk to a lot of Mets fans just anecdotally, and I hear from a ton of them on my post email. And it was really interesting yesterday. I think a lot of them felt a little better when they saw Steve Cohen's statement. He left no doubt about how he was feeling. And then shortly thereafter, you had Stearns talking about how they need to prevent runs. And as our colleague Mark Sanchez properly pointed out, where does that neon sign point? Well, the first baseman. And so, I think Cohen is certainly smart enough to realize that. Look, I mean, I understand that there are other issues involved with Pete Alonso, but you have just alienated and angered every single member of your fan base right now. And there is one way you can bring a little bit of that goodwill back, and that's to finally, once and for all, solve the Pete Alonso issue and not put it in David Stearns' hands, because Mets fans, frankly, don't trust David Stearns when it comes to Pete Alonso, because for whatever reason, he clearly doesn't see what Mets fans see in him. I get it. He was a flawed player. He's a below average defensive player. There are a lot of things to not like about him. But you throw all that aside, he is the most popular Met player, I would argue, since Tom Seaver. He really is. I mean, more popular than David Wright, more popular than any of the guys in the 86 teams individually. And if you're just going to discard him because he doesn't fit into your tight philosophy, as certainly I think a lot of Mets fans are fearful now with Stearns, I think that's a grotesque problem. And I just think the one thing that you have to think about if you're a Mets fan is that Steve Cohen still outranks him on the flow chart, because I just think that that's all that did was just exacerbate anger that's percolating beyond belief right now.
What do you think, Mike Puma? Will Cohen win this? I mean, that's the way we see it. Mike Vac put it right. I think it's going to be a potential battle, but again, between Cohen and Stearns, whether Alonso's back. He didn't hit that stirring home run like he did at the end of last year, but he did have a better year, certainly offensively than he did the previous year, much better. Mike Puma, what do you think?
He had a terrific year. Yeah, I mean, he had a terrific year offensively. Yeah, we know what he is defensively, but this is really a high wire act here, because listen, this is New York City. New York wants stars. New York, they love their guys, and Pete Alonso, Vac is right. I mean, Pete Alonso is as popular as any Mets player in this generation, and you can't just discard him here. I don't know. Is he willing to become a full-time DH at this point in his career? Is that something they could talk about? I don't know.
No.
I mean, if that's a no, I mean, and you have your president of baseball operations talking about defense here, and we know what Pete Alonso is defensively. I mean, this is not an easy one.
Yeah, guys, maybe Cohen outranks him. Cohen will probably bring him back, but let's just wind the clock back. If they don't bring him back last year, they know from the beginning they're not going to bring it back, and they're the team that trades for Cody Bellinger and puts him at first base. And the Mets win 88 this year instead of what they did. And there was a game tonight in Los Angeles. I think Met fans would have moved on from Pete Alonso. I think this is about winning and losing and what your philosophy is. And certainly, Pete Alonso does the thing that's hardest to do in baseball right now, which is hit and get the ball over the fence and produce runs. And I see the value in bringing him back. I also know I covered a lot of Yankee teams over the years that had multiple DHs playing defense. And if you have Juan Soto and Pete Alonso on your team, and both are insisting they need to be in the field to be who they're going to be, You're not going to make David Stearns wants a team with pitching depth and defense. He failed at every level this year to provide that. If you bring Alonso back, I am guaranteeing you will not be a good defensive team. Alonso was not a good defender, and he took a giant step backward in handling the ball, both with his glove and throwing it this year. You will be a bad defensive team. It's fine. He's good on offense. It's hard to hit it. Fans love him. I think the key is to win. If the Mets won without him this year, everyone would have turned the page.
You think, I mean, Bellinger, you brought up, I mean, he's really a perfect guy for the Mets because
Yes.
who's their center fielder right now? You sign him right away, and you've given yourself protection on Alonso, and you've got a center fielder. Right now, they got a gaping hole in center field. I mean, other than Taylor, who's a good, very good defensively, and that didn't work. It seems like they have players who are great offensively and not defensively, and vice versa. That
It's a
seems
tough puzzle. It's a
that
tough
seems to be
puzzle,
an
right?
issue.
Because Lindor took a step backwards in the field this year also, and he's going to play at 32 next year. I thought Lindor and Nimmo, 32, 33, I thought both were a little worse on defense. They're going to be a little older next year. You're locked into these contracts. You're locked into Soto. They want to be able to be athletic and field the ball. You're putting problem on problem. And again, I really like covering Pete Alonso. Bring him back. He's an easy locker to go to and talk to. He's popular with the fans. It's easier for me to just say, "Hey, bring Pete Alonso back." That will be popular with Met fans. But when the ball is not caught next year and ERAs are going up and unearned runs are going up, it's going to be because you have a locking yourself into a bad defensive team for a
And
long time.
you know what this underscores to me is the two positions they really can control here are center field and second base. I mean, they can move on from Jeff McNeil here, and they can look to do something in center field. And those are two positions that they're going to have, Pete Alonso and Soto aside control over here. And if you can upgrade those two spots, that's a pretty good start.
Yeah, I'm with you. Second base, to me, if you get a great defender at second base, figure it out, whether it's Jed Williams or whomever, great defender at second. And I think Lindor was okay. Nimmo, I think, went backwards defensively. Lindor made maybe more errors than he normally does, but I think he was generally pretty good still, very good still. You get a good defender in center, whether it be Bellinger or whomever. And I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Am I the only one who thinks Torrens would be fine playing as the catcher? The guy is incredible at throwing people out. If they don't like their defense, let's be great up the middle, right? I mean, even if Lindor's not the best shortstop anymore, it's still pretty good. Get a good second baseman in there, get a good center fielder in there, and you have Torrens. Am I nuts thinking, maybe they can get something for Alvarez? I don't know.
No, but John, I think you also underlie another source of frustration for a lot of people with the general manager is that you look and see what Dave Dombrowski did at the All-Star break. You look what Preller did at the All-Star at the trading deadline, rather. Excuse me. And the Padres and Phillies improved themselves by forfeiting the future for sure thing present assets that were stronger and were exactly what the Mets needed. And the Mets went along the margins and got kind of like the JV version of both those guys. And look what happened. I mean, to me, I mean, if the Mets really fancied themselves a contender on July 31st, they would have been far more aggressive. And I think that's look. I understand why they weren't that way last year because they weren't quite all the way back yet by the All-Star, but by the trading deadline. But I don't understand why they were so bashful this year. I know they made a lot of moves, and of course, in retrospect, almost every single one of them was calamitous. But I think that's what happens when you're dealing in the margins as opposed to going for sure things.
I'll say this, Vac, is I do think he needs to be bolder. I think he needs to take the shackles off and recognize that Cohn's money will cover up a lot of things prospect-wise where you could okay, we traded some prospects, so we'll cover in the major leagues for a while and grow more prospects. But the one danger is the Mets center fielder for the next 10 years is playing with the Cubs because they got overbowled one year. Like Pete Armstrong's the perfect center fielder for this team. He's brilliant on defense. He hits homers, he steals bases, etc. I think he said something interesting that we can't ever know from his press conference yesterday because he's not going to tell us. But he said, if I made the trades that you're suggesting, you would have hated it more. So that to me means, does McLean have to be in it? Does Benj have to be in it? Does Tong have to be? Now, at some point, you can't probably keep them all. You've got to do it, and you want to do it before they lose value. But there is always the danger of getting Javi Baez for Pete Crow Armstrong, because I'll say this, we wouldn't be talking about center field if they didn't make that trade.
And you talk the danger in this day and age is you make that Pete Crow Armstrong deal, and you're vilified forever. I mean, just you look at just the 2 weeks. Drew Gilbert was playing well for the Giants, and Mets fans were up in arms there. And they got a pretty good player back, and Tyler Rogers was the one trade deadline deal that kind of worked out for them. He was very good. But you just saw that, those couple of weeks where Drew Gilbert looked great, and it was like Mets fans are ready to set the world on fire.
You're absolutely right, Mike. But one thing I wouldn't do is overreact to what the fans say or what we say. And I think Stearns will be good there. I don't think he will do that. Vac, you're correct about the too passive at the deadline. Those were the two players. They didn't even try for Bader. Now Bader did slump the last month and a half or so. He was with the Mets. I almost get that, but it is a little bit, I don't know if it's ironic, but it's unfortunate that the Phillies got the two exact guys who would have pulled the Mets up, right? I mean, Bader killed the Mets, but he was good against everybody else. And Duran was outstanding in the bullpen, whereas Helsley, I don't even know. I can't even believe this is the same guy, the way he got hit around. And, I mean, Mullins didn't do anything either. Can somebody change their stripes, though? I mean, he's been a small market guy. It's worked for him for a long time. It worked for him in year one. Who thinks he's actually – and we're going to see Fried and Crochet, two guys he did in the game tonight as we do this, two guys he didn't go for. Is he going to be able to change his stripes and go for these kind of pitchers? Now, he did go for Yamamoto, but, I mean, he could have gotten, and I'm sure some of the people asked for McLean, but we certainly would be up in arms if McLean had been traded. But allegedly, from everything I've heard, he could have gotten Crochet if he said yes to both Sproat and Jed Williams. It would have been a couple more guys, but Sproat and Jed Williams and had Crochet. Now, if you had Crochet with the Mets, not only would have been in, they would have been a threat. Can he change, guys? What do you think? Can he actually go out there and spend on a long-term pitcher? I mean, Fried, outstanding for the Yankees, but it's a gamble, right? They got another 7 years with him.
Yeah, no, I mean he's going to have to change, I think. And you know what? You brought up Yamamoto. That's another guy they heavily pursued, and they thought they had a good shot, but that was Steve Cohen driving that bus also. That I think that's another example of Steve Cohen getting involved in. If they're going to change, I think it has to be with Steve Cohen. I know you want to leave David Stearns alone to cook, but I think you have to sit down a little bit and say, hey, we could use the higher price ingredients over here.
But I think the irony is that if Stearns wanted to go about his business in Stearnsian fashion, if I can coin a name,
I like it.
It would have been far better, easier to do it last year when they were coming off an NLCS appearance. If they had lost Alonso this year, then we could talk about how terrible a hole that would have left in this year's offense. But the fact is, I think he had enough gravitas and had built up an equity at this time last year because of what he'd done in his first year. That people will actually be like, well, you know what, we trust the general manager.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is I cover all these teams, guys, and I know that there comes a point when a fan either trusts the general manager in charge or does not. Interestingly, I mean, a ton of Yankee fans lost trust in Brian Cashman years ago. I mean, I guess they'll somehow muddle themselves together to watch the playoff game tonight.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I felt that way about Leon Rose. I mean, look, I disagreed with the decision to fire Tom Thibodeau, but I think that most Knicks fans believe that when Leon Rose makes a decision, it's going to be a smart one in the best interest of the team. And I think at this point last year, if you polled a lot of Mets fans, they would have said the same thing about Stearns, even if they would have let Alonso go. I mean, they would have been happy about it, but it would have been, I think, less of a potential backlash than there will be this year, just because of how it went and just the notion. Look, I mean, Mets fans always carry around the scars that they're the guys that traded Tom Seaver. Not saying that Pete Alonso is Tom Seaver. I'm saying that in the context of the franchise, he's every bit as essential to the fabric in this moment as Seaver was in 1977.
Vac, I think you hit a key point, which is there's been a loss of faith in it. I wrote about it today is in the winning clubhouse last year, uh, Steve Cohen talked about like slaying the negative perception of Met fans. And 12 months ago, it felt like they were well on the way to doing that, that they had the right owner, right head of baseball operations, right manager. And 12 months later, it feels very Wilponian. I will say this and I wonder what each of you think. Don't we think we're going to get a much quicker litmus test about who David Stearns is and who's driving the bus? Not on Alonso, but Edwin Diaz is going to opt out. He was the only relief pitcher they could trust from the beginning of the season to the end. He kind of has them over a barrel to some degree. He could come in and say, "Yeah, what's the highest ever?" Hater, John, you're always good. Is Hater the highest ever at this point? Or
I think Diaz is
yeah,
right at 20
right.
million.
Like
Right.
he could ask for five at 110 or whatever. And the logic of David Stearns would be don't give a reliever in his 30s who's had a traumatic injury this kind of money. On the other hand, they would be left with the 37-year-old Brooks Raley, AJ Minter coming off a hip surgery in 24 and a lat injury that cost them $5 million. I mean, who's their bullpen? Who's their closer? Who, Oscar Brazaban? So to me, the first litmus test is does David Stearns leave his comfort zone for Edwin Diaz?
Yeah, I think you're right, Joel. I mean, Diaz looks like a must sign at this point, and we're going to assume with 2 years and 38, 39 million to go, they need to bring him back. I've been saying 3 for 75 or something like that, and he does set the market again for relievers, and good for him. But Stearns is in a it's hard to believe that a year after he was the golden boy that he's in this issue. But I mean, look at the key guys on this team. There are, as far as I can tell, there are 6 key guys, right? You got the 4 offensive players who we know all had very good years. You've got McLean and you've got Diaz. He didn't bring any of these guys in, right? They've had a ton of GMs over the past 5 or 6 years, right? I mean, Brody brought in Diaz. Porter brought in Lindor. Sandy. They all brought in somebody, but Stearns has not hit the jackpot. And now last year he got good bargains and good deals with Severino and Minaya, and certainly worked. I don't want to say around the margins. They were very good players, but he's really on the spot already, right? Isn't he? I mean, obviously the manager is always really the one who's going to be on the hot seat first, but he's going to have to hit a home run this offseason. And I think he's a very smart guy. He is, he was great in the press conference. He took it. He understood it. He knows exactly what the right thing is to say. But I mean, he had a terrible year. Frankly.
John, I'm gonna piggyback. Can I just piggyback on that just so we can have a wrap-up question there? Because I think John threw the ball up at the net. And we'll start with you, Puma, because I think it's where you're going anyway, which is this the right man at the right time in the right job to, when they fell apart in '07 and '08, darkness came for a long time after that. Are they about to see the sunlight again because David Stearns is in charge? Or are we heading towards some darkness here?
I have a lot of confidence in this administration, Joel. Steve Cohen really wants to win, and he's showing that with the way he goes about things here. He waited a couple of years just to, what was it, 3 years to hire David Stearns. He's certainly willing to write the checks. You have the right owner. Any Mets fan who complains about the owner, I think they need to get their head examined. And I think Stearns is a smart guy, and he built something in Milwaukee. Now we know New York is a different animal, but I trust this administration, and that's something. This was my 16th season covering the team. My first year was the last year Jerry Manuel and Omar Minaya, and this is the most I've trusted, ownership, front office. I think they have the right people here.
Look, I mean, I trust the general managers because I see who the best team in the National League is, and he was largely responsible for, for putting them in the right direction. So I can't see how you can't look at his handiwork and say that he's got skills at this job, also the job he did last year. Now I feel better about about this particular collapse and the 07-08 collapse, because unless there was some, shadowy figure named, Johnny Dadoff waiting to take down, Steve Cohen. Which of course, in retrospect, look, the Wilpons were the Wilpons, but the seminal moment in their ownership is when they went broke. It's as simple as that. And I don't see that happening to Steve Cohen anytime soon. And I think this David Stern is also a smart enough guy to realize that, he can be given a lot of carte blanche, but he's got to, at the end of the day, keep the boss happy. And that means making sure that next year's team is going to be competitive. So, you can get rid of everybody you want to, but you better have a plan to be able to acquire the kind of pieces they're going to make the Mets relevant again. They can't afford, especially next year with the strike looming, they can't afford to say next year is rebuilding. Rebuilding for what? Because by the time the sport comes back, we might be playing under a whole different set of rules. Probably not, but we might be. There's just no way to know. And so you got to look at next year almost like it's the last year, in the old days when you were trying to build around a star senior in college. Make sure you give this guy one last team to go out on. You almost have to look at it that way, I believe. And I think that Cohen is going to make that, pretty clear to Stearns. I would think he would, if he's anything like any of us know about him, which is a very competitive, very ambitious, and very demanding guy when it comes to the bottom line.
I'm with you guys on both. Cohen's certainly not going broke anytime soon. I think Stern's very smart, but there's a lot of pressure on these guys to do a lot better. There's a lot of work to be done. Over the last 93 games, this team was not good. It was terrible. It was better than 4 teams that had given up, sold, were absolutely awful, historically bad in the case of Colorado, and 3 other absolutely terrible teams. So, let's not kid ourselves. I know that everybody, Joel, you weren't the only one with a month to go or 2 months, felt that this team was going to pull it out. All they had to do was beat a small market team or other teams who had sold. But this is not, there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot wrong with this team to be this bad, to play 4-10 or 4-15 baseball over 3.5 months. They got a lot of work to do. They need to improve the team a lot. That's not a fluke. Maybe in 07 they could convince themselves they were fluked out of it. Now when you've got 6 teams making it, including 2 small market teams, one that won 83 games, it's pretty sad how bad it was. This to me is the all-time collapse, and this is not a good team, and they got a lot of work to do.
John, only in retrospect, I'll wrap it with this by saying only in retrospect do I appreciate that how much you saw it before me, because as I've sat down and started to plot out what should they do this offseason and recognize their surest starting pitchers are a converted reliever, Clay Holmes, and a guy who's made 8 starts, Nolan McLean, and we have no idea if he can make the season. They essentially have no bullpen the moment Diaz opts out. And they have this jigsaw puzzle defensive problem, which is to bring back all the best offensive players, is to continue to be bad on defense, almost no matter what you do. I think they have a very difficult jigsaw puzzle, and I think probably overreacting to the failure of 2025 will worsen that jigsaw puzzle, and yet they will probably feel compelled to do some things that are very bold, and they're going to need to get it right because it is a danger zone. Because John, I thought it was a better team, and only in retrospect and sitting and looking at it now, as I try to plot it forward, do I see what you saw. What I know is a winning team all the time is the New York Post sports section, especially our baseball coverage. There's few things I enjoy in life more than the last 20 plus years sitting next to Mike Vaccaro in a press box and chit-chatting about movies, usually maybe some basketball, and occasionally we look at the baseball game. And there is no better person to cover the Mets in our city than Mike Puma. The Mikes, John and I appreciate you joining us on the show.
Great being with you guys. Thanks for having us.
This was great. Thanks.
Great to have you guys, and that is a cute dog you've got there, Mike. You made an appearance. You've joined Keith Hernandez.
Can you see him?
Yes. We either see him or you got a great statue of a dog looking out a window.
Oh, there he is. He's on the windowsill.
John and I are so thankful that our friends and colleagues, Mike Puma and Mike Vaccaro, joined us on the show. John, hit or error?
I'm going to give an error. I don't really know how strongly I feel about this, but I think it's a little bit of a shame that the playoffs are decided by a tiebreaker. I mean, I get it if it's a win the division versus a wild card team. I get that why we use a tiebreaker for that, but the Mets and the Reds did finish with the same record of 83 wins. I don't I'm not doing this because I want the Mets in or that they deserve to be in. Frankly, I don't think either team deserves to be in the playoffs, but it was very exciting in 1999 when the Mets and the Reds, the same two teams, played it out, and the Mets won 2-0 with Al Leiter throwing a complete game. We wouldn't see anybody throw a complete game, certainly from the Mets. And they're not in a position where they could have gone very far in the playoffs anyway or whatever, but would have been exciting to see a game being played rather than a tiebreaker. And by the way, the tiebreaker of head-to-head, if you're going to have a tiebreaker, that's fine. This next tiebreaker of division record, they can't. If they ever get to that, which it might have, if the Mets and the Diamondbacks had tried, is ridiculous because then whoever's in an easier division already had the advantage in terms of overall record. Then to get the tiebreaker because you have a good record in your crummy division, that's really nuts.
Yeah, John, I agree 100% with you. I think I wrote about it in my Plus column last week. And just the absurdity is like if the Giants and Reds had ended up tied for the final wild card, even though they're not in the same division, their head-to-head, their last game against each other was April 7th. They played each other the first and third series of the year.
Right.
So we would have been basing a tiebreaker on two teams that essentially weren't the teams, even close.
Right.
So
No,
what they
one
were.
team
So it's
bought,
just
one team sold. Yeah.
sell one game to Netflix. I'm sure they'll be happy to show a winner go home game. Some streaming service would do
Right.
it.
More money can be made.
Yes,
Like
I'm
money,
with
right?
you. John, look, we've talked a lot about it on the show already, and I get it could be a bit trite, but my error goes to the 2025 New York Mets. Because I just continue not to fathom this. This was a team. It hit its second most homers in its history. It has the highest stolen base percentage ever in a season of at least 154 games, and they stole lots of bases. The top four guys in their lineup all had various great achievement where you think they would just offense their way to some victories down the stretch. I, John, I'm blown away by it. It is a failure they all have to live with, at least for the offseason, and who knows how much longer beyond that, that nobody rose up, not an individual, not the group, not some voices, not some bats, not some arms, not some leadership. It is such a failure, and I am still so stunned that they couldn't figure out how to be better than the Cincinnati Reds, who I think's home run leader had 22 this year. John, it is a real for an organization that's had a lot of bad stuff happen in its 6+ decades. I'd put this collapse up there with the '07 collapse because in '07, you're collapsing when it's one wild card and you're collapsing to a Phillies team that was great. You're collapsing to the Reds. Man, I just don't see this as forgivable.
This isn't a memorable meltdown. It's not just this winter. It's they're going to live with this forever. I mean, it is absolutely brutal. You are right. They had health from their four positional stars and performance. Nimmo hit his most home runs. Lindor had his usual fantastic season. Alonso had a great offensive season. Soto did exactly what you'd expect for a $51 million a year player. It's really amazing that you can have these four stars and not make it to the playoffs. It really is shocking. And to go 0-70 when you're losing going into the ninth inning, just amazing. And to me, someone who had covered a lot of their games this year, they were just, I can't believe how passive they were. I didn't see any anger other than McNeil when he made an out. That was about it, right? And then with with 3 outs to go, I believe it was, when Alvarez broke the bat over his knee, that was about the extent of it, right? And we didn't hear of any outbursts. We didn't hear of any meetings. It's just like they let it happen to them. It's really sad.
Yeah. Unbelievable failure up and down the organization. The success story, Tommy Hogan, our producer, extraordinaire. We put this together also very quickly. Tommy is always so great at jumping on and helping us out. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, please rate and review us. Please rate and review us. If you like what John and I do, it helps the show. It helps keep it going. So do that. Or give us a view on the New York Post Sports YouTube page. You get to do the four box for the guts of the show today with four of us from the New York Post. And look, the playoffs have begun. We're going to go right through this and then into the offseason and the hot stove if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.